dominant performance from Bjergsen with the aid of amazing camping out that middle lane throughout the early stages of the game. Truthfully, TSM had SK's number through the entirety of that match, all the way back to picks and bans. And the early game, what was your thoughts on the Sona pickup for Unrated, knowing Brown was open, and how SK handled the laning phase?
Yeah, looking at what point, at the end of the draft, basically, SK had one pick left, and they knew they were going to play Lucian because that was their early pick into Tristana Nami, and they went for Sona. And I really disagree with that. I feel Sona is just an inferior version of Nami, especially when it comes to poking. You'll get out sustained eventually. Thresh would have been better. Braum would have been better. Just anything with some aggressive play because you need to shut that Tristana lane down. There is this stereotype that Tristana do so well at playoffs and worlds for some reason, but she can be beaten. She can be beaten by Lucian in lane, but you need to play the lane correctly. And maybe SK was just, you know, has the jitters coming first world game, play passive. But if you want to play passive, don't pick Lucian.
I do want to kind of push against you a little bit on the Sona point. I think Sona is great. Actually, if the lane were normal and not misplayed, I think Sona Lucian would have won that fight, and I think Sona does just fine against Nami. I realize you're the better support player than me, but from what I've seen of League of Legends, I think Sona deserves more respect than you're giving her, but that as it may. I do think, though, the game kind of played out as you expect. TSM have better individual players, amazing, obviously a better jungler than Gilius. Gilius also not a very aggressive jungler in the first place. I mean, this was a guy who was getting out-jungled in his promotion relegation match against Millennium, you know, and that's a tough mark to beat then when you're up against guys like Insec in your group.
Yeah.
I think a key point in this game happened to be that there is just no synergy between the mid lane and jungle. Obviously, you're putting in a substitute, and they failed to recognize that the entire team comp of TSM revolves around Yasuo and getting Yasuo far ahead. So Kha'Zix was basically just lounging around mid lane instead of making his own thing happen, try to create pressure elsewhere and force TSM to react. Instead, we saw him just walk behind Jez's the entire time, just be like, okay, I'm waiting for Lee Sin to come around. Where's Lee Sin? Lee Sin never shows up because he's not going to show up in the 1v2 scenario. And he had multiple opportunities to get better objective control when they committed to making dives on Mundo, and it just never happened.
Not only that, but to really jungle here at the world level, you have to have a lot of synergy with your team, because the problem really was that amazing. He had those misplays. He kind of gave up the double buffs when he was trying to make the plays, but what he did really well was that he was playing always on the side of the map with the pressure, right? And Gilius looked a bit lost. He was constantly in the wrong side of the jungle, getting counter-jungled, and it was just kind of a disaster. He had zero presence in that game.
What do you mean playing on the side of the map with pressure? Just for the clarification.
Yeah, well, when the lanes are pushing up, so let's say you're pushed up into the top and middle side, or you've got a preferable matchup where, for example, in the Dyrus roam coming down after they had pressed up into top, and when they had that Yasuo who was getting fed in the mid lane, go into the enemy's red buff in that circumstance if you're on the blue side and try and control the top side of the map in that circumstance. They got the deep wards down, and then you can punish so hard off of that.
See, TSM was capitalizing on mistakes. SK wasn't doing so. At one point, the desk here pointed out, I actually didn't even see it myself until you guys called it out, that Julius could have went for a red buff. Instead, they went for the tower push. Same for bottom. Going back to that laning phase, I went back and watched the first like 4 or 5 minutes of that laning phase, and SK they gave TSM the push. They got outpoked. All their poke led up to just Nami out sustaining it anyways, and they didn't play aggressive enough. And if you don't play aggressive enough, you can't capitalize on the mistakes, and then you'll just die just a slow death, and eventually Bjergsen will become too big.
Well, very one-sided game. We will have to take a step back and talk about TSM's power later in the day. But coming up next, 2 teams will be making their first appearance at Worlds as Darker Passage from Turkey faces AHQ Esports Club. We'll be taking a quick look at some of the teams and players here. Are the Turkish champions? They are watching their matches from that practice room. We need to see how they step up against stronger opposition. AHQ, they are doing the same. It's quite focused, calm looks on their faces. Guys, we will be moving to a short break very, very shortly. When we are back, we'll return with that match.
In all sorts of trouble. Freddy comes down to join the party, but he's simply just another death for TSM.
And SK just makes matters worse.
Wow! Gilius going down. Jess in the wrong place at the wrong time. Turtle gets hit up. Will he be able to keep it going? Everybody's jumping in and going for broke this time. Gilius gets hit up. Thrown down in the box, and they go for Freddy towards the fountain.